but not always successfully toward the instantiation of being. We can't make sense of any of this discontent with the status quo, this cosmic restlessness, without bringing in a reason why the universe is restless. Yes, you can explain it at all sorts of scientific levels of reading the universe. You can explain it chemically and physically, biologically, and so forth, the change that's going on. But Whitehead isn't satisfied with proximate explanations. He's looking, and this makes him somewhat theological, for an ultimate explanation of why the universe has this tendency toward adventure. And this is why he brings in the idea of God. God is not just the source of order, but also the source of novelty. God is the source not just of the status quo, but of what disturbs the status quo. And the mark of wisdom and prudence and mature spirituality is to know what it's time for. It's all a matter of timing. When the universe was just a seething volcanic mass of stuff, it was not yet time for cells or for monkeys and elephants. A process is something that unfolds, and at each moment in the process, some possibilities are relevant, some possibilities are not relevant. And this is an important thing in our understanding of religion and ethics in a processive universe, because the problem for both is to know what is good at this particular moment, not just in some changeless heaven, but what is good right now. Not incidentally that Whitehead was completely relativistic. He wasn't. There is an absolute, there is something steady on which we can gain we can train our attention and our spiritual focus, and that's he called God. But God is not stable, not just order, but God is what causes the cosmos to be restless as well. But God does not force the universe to take a particular pathway. In process thought, what God does is offer relevant possibilities, but these possibilities are offered persuasively rather than dictatorially or coercively. They're gently offered, and the universe can accept them or reject them. That subjectivity that I mentioned a while ago, which everything has to some degree, means the capacity for decision. And every event in the universe, in a sense, has to decide what to do, where to go, in the presence of this inspirational reality that Whitehead refers to as God. And we can back off from it and say, we're just fine here. The universe could have said, perhaps at the stage of hydrogen atoms, this is a pretty good universe, let's just stop here. But that's not what happened. Atoms gave rise to molecules, molecules to cells, cells to organisms, organisms to societies, societies became more intense. And are we anywhere near the end of this process? By no means. So process thought is very open-ended in terms of the future, not just of the universe, but also of the human species as well. An openness that we don't have in a lot of traditional theology and philosophy. If God is love, if we take that teaching of religion seriously and simply know from our own experience that love does not coerce, that love allows the other space in which to be, then theologically we should have decided long ago that God is not coercive power, not coercive dictatorial power in that sense of the term, but is persuasion, operating gently according to love. God is the tender care that nothing be lost. And to get to the question that you're all asking about, the title of Joe Bracken's book, which is, Does God Roll Dice?
Yeah.
The answer to the question in the title of this book is yes, in the sense that God does not force the universe, but allows for the play of indeterminacy. And this indeterminacy takes place at a level that even physics today would say occurs at the quantum subatomic level. It takes place in what biology refers to as random, accidental, chance, contingent variations. It takes place at the human level in what we call freedom of will, free choice. So the same kind of metaphysics and cosmology that makes a place for freedom also makes a place for evolution. So in some sense, both problems arise at the same time and are treated in the same way by process thought. The universe is not a mechanism. A mechanism is determined. And today, to this day, I suspect that the majority of the scientific and intellectual world still follows the mechanistic paradigm rather than the organismic one. Even though, in spite of Einstein, in spite of Planck and so forth, almost, I would say half of evolutionary biologists are still about 300 years behind in their physics from the point of view of process thought. They're very mechanistic. Some of the main philosophers of evolution, like Daniel Dennett and Richard Dawkins and Jerry Coyne and many others, all these people are still essentially mechanistic and deterministic in their thinking. So what process thought is trying to do is to make a place simultaneously for human freedom. And in order to do that, it has to reconceive nature as not deterministic, not mechanistic, but as indeterminate. So that even at the subatomic level, the dice roll. Einstein himself did not like this idea. Einstein told his fellow physicists that God does not play at dice with the universe. And Einstein represents one kind of mentality that's still very much around, and not maybe so much among physicists, but other kinds of scientists, including social scientists. Determinism is very much alive in the intellectual world. So that's one of the advantages. I'm not a process theologian myself, but I do take certain themes from process thought. And I think this is one of them that I take very seriously. We need, in our attempts to justify the existence of free will and human freedom in the context of a universe to which we're linked by history and by chemistry and physics and everything else, we need to find some way to justify our own freedom at the same time as we allow for Darwinian evolution, for chance and indeterminacy. In all of this, however, what does God want? Why is God doing all this? From the point of view of process theology, God's will, and this is right out of Whitehead himself, is the maximizing of beauty. And what that means is the maximizing of an integration of order with novelty, of harmony and contrast. But since God does not force the divine self on the world, there is also room for evil, the evil of disorder or chaos, as well as the evil of monotony. So what is the meaning of our lives in this way of looking at things? And this is Whitehead's answer to the question of to what can we lift up our hearts? What can give us a basis for spirituality? The meaning of our lives and what we can set our hearts on is each one of us doing, even in the most excruciatingly monotonous ways, what we can to intensify the cosmic beauty that has given rise to us and that we hope can exist on after us. Just an example of how you can do that, and it makes it very biblical, is the practice of justice. What justice implies, at the very least, is bringing the marginalized, those who have been disowned, back to the center of society, to integrate diversity, ethnic, racial, sexual, all kinds of diversity into the common life. And this, of course, is not easy. And Whitehead has this maxim that the halfway house between triviality or monotony on the one hand and beauty and perfection on the other, the halfway house is often chaos. The chaos is often the price that has to be paid for the intensification of beauty. And that's the way the universe has always worked. It's always